You know, our sages asked the question, "My Hanukkah?" What is Hanukkah? What is the celebration about? As it turns out, we have two sources for this and two very different events that we're celebrating. One source is the Talmud. The Talmud goes into detail about the miracle of oil. After Antiochus Epiphanes had defiled, desecrated the temple back in, say, about 168 BCE, and it was finally cleansed through a revolt, only one jug of oil remained, survived, that was uncontaminated. That jug of oil should have only lasted for one day. But instead, the oil remained lit for 8 days. That was the miracle. And that's the miracle really discussed almost exclusively in the Talmud. But we have another source for the miracle of Hanukkah, and that's in the book of Maccabees. It's very striking in the book of Maccabees. There's no mention at all of the menorah, of the oil, of the miracle of the oil lasting 8 days instead of one. No mention of that at all. In the book of Maccabees, and of course there's a number of books, and they're a little bit different, but essentially they're conveying what seems to be almost miraculous, the defeat of Antiochus Epiphanes IV, the king of the Seleucid Empire, who rose up, as I said, in about 168, and sought to eradicate the Jewish faith in every way he knew. Eradicate the study of Torah, of course, the practice of the Jewish faith. Circumcision became illicit. He went into the temple and defiled it in every way he knew possible. Slaughtered pigs on the altar, defiled it in unspeakable ways, and rises up a family, Matasyahu and his children. They're able to assemble a clan of people. Estimates are no more than about 600 Jews fought against Antiochus. This fighting force would grow, and they would ultimately defeat the Seleucid Empire. In that, the temple is restored, cleansed of all the defilement. Now, what's very striking is the book of Maccabees never makes it into the Jewish canon. It should also be striking to know that the first book of Maccabees originally was written in Hebrew. It doesn't survive in that language. It survives through the Septuagint in Greek. And as it turns out, the Talmud never mentions the book of Maccabees, which historically is very important to us. Maccabees 1, Maccabees 2 in particular are extremely important historically. Many of the stories that we know about the war and the series of battles that occurred, we know from the book of Maccabees. Yet, strikingly, never mentioned anywhere in the Talmud. Now, the Talmud, of course, mentions the miracle of a family fighting, battling Antiochus Epiphanes, but makes no mention of the book of Maccabees itself. The book of Maccabees, conversely, mentions the war, the battle, the martyrs in Second Maccabees, those who risked their lives, the defeat of the Seleucid Empire, but never mentions the menorah's oil, the miracle where only one jug of oil, enough to illuminate the menorah for one day, miraculously lasts for 8 days. That is nowhere to be found in the book of Maccabees. The question, of course, is why? What's going on here? The book of Maccabees is considered a Sfarim HaChitzonim. It's called like an apocrypha. It's not holy at all to us. It's valuable to us historically, but it's not a holy book. It wasn't written with divine inspiration. Our sages, the Jewish people, we did not want it a part of the canon. We didn't want to emphasize the military victory over Antiochus, but rather emphasize the miracle of the light, the miracle of the oil. Why? What's the difference between these two? This is really quite striking. You know, as it turns out, as prophesied in the book of Daniel, the Second Temple period was a time that was marked by wars where almost all of it, the Jewish state, was essentially a vassal state, with the exception a relatively brief period of time, and this is the Maccabean era. It was less than a century that the Maccabean dynasty, the Maccabean kingdom lasted, but it was even a much smaller time when it was a completely independent state. As it turns out, the defeat of the Seleucid Empire was something that was rather brief. But that light, the light that stayed with us, remains with us to this day. Why? You know, as it turns out, the time we're experiencing right now, it's cold. The days are very short and the nights are long. And there are times we may feel fairly alone. Yet in the midst of that bitter darkness, that bittere finster, God showed his light. Sometimes we wonder, Lord, are you really out there? Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever feel like, God, I know you've answered the questions and supplications of our ancestors, but are you listening to me at all now? King David had that question in the opening passages of Psalm 22. Are you listening to me? I'm not sure if you hear me. In the midst of that cold winter, when nights are so long, the Almighty, blessed be his holy name, kept the candle lit. The message, I love you, I'm here. I know it's dark, but I'm here. The miracle of Hanukkah, just know that I'm always here with you. We in turn, when we light the menorah, what we're saying is, I love you too. I know you're out there. That's why we place the menorah by the window, or we place it outside of the door opposite the mezuzah. We put it in the most public place, and we're never allowed to enjoy its light in a utilitarian fashion, but rather we're shining light back, that light to God. We're saying essentially, Lord, I know you're there. I see your light, and I love you too. You see, our sages understood that the light of the menorah wouldn't end. God would always be there. Sometimes it's hard to find him. Sometimes we don't hear him because it's dark, so long. This exile's been so bitter. But the Lord said, I want you to know that I'm there. I'm watching over you. When we light the menorah, we're committing ourselves to Hashem. We're saying to the Almighty, Hashem, I know you're out there. Here is the light. We understand the military defeat of the Maccabees was temporal. But the light always stays with us. The message, Hashem, we see you. We know you're there, even when it's dark, even when it's cold. And I love you too. Happy Hanukkah. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא עת נעשה בחפצו כל